there, and thanks for joining. If you're new here, my name is Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at places like garage sales, flea markets, anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Today's video is going to be what sold for December 31st through January 6th. Let's dive in. The first thing that sold was one of the Maker's Mark whiskey bandanas. This sold for $9.49 and we found that in the Goodwill bins for $1.18. Next up was a lot of 7 black and white vinyl plastic cow print table covers. They were all brand new in the package. We were gifted these to sell by a family member, so we had no cost, and these sold surprisingly for $31.34. Next up was a vintage Testorite Realrite adjustable roll film developing tank. This came from that church rummage sale where we got all of the photography equipment. We got this item for just $1 and it sold for $23.98, and that was on offer to buyer. Next up was one of the Harry Potters in multiple different languages that we got. This one was a Thai translation of Philosopher's Stone. We got this at the thrift store for $5.98, and this book sold for $94.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was a Ralph Lauren men's linen button-up shirt. We got this at a garage sale for $2 and it sold for $25 even. We do sometimes pick up Ralph Lauren men's shirts. They don't always sell for a lot, but I will almost always pick up Ralph Lauren shirts, or it depends, you know, so not all brands, but a lot of brands, if they are 100% linen items sell really well for us. So there's a tip for you. Next up was the second of the, actually last week I said when the Kate Spade bag sold that was the second, but this is actually the second one. The second of the Kate Spade lunch bags that we had picked up at that estate sale for $5, and this one sold for $23.98. That was on offer to buyer. Next up was a card from my husband's personal collection. This was a baseball card. It was a Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck Collector's Choice Silver Signature card. This sold for $4.38. Next up was something that we got out of a recent storage unit that we purchased, and we are going to have a video on that unit coming up soon, so definitely check that out. This was a Sylvania pink portable digital CD player boombox. We had paid $1.16 for each of the items from that unit, and this boombox sold for $28 even on best offer. This was the first item to sell from that unit, so and it sold really, really fast. So this is a bolo. Be on the lookout for this item. Didn't sell, I mean, we didn't make tons on it, but it sold super fast, and even my daughter, Nina, saw this item and she was like, oh, I would want one of those. So this is something that her generation is interested in, these vintage style items. Okay, next up was 2 antique pewter oval floral engraved serving platters. These were actually gifted to me by a friend to sell, so we had no cost, and they sold for $55.18 on offer to buyer. Next up was a 2005 Carl's Jr. toy from a kids meal. This was from the Racing Stripes movie, and this was a little miniature camera slide viewer, like a viewfinder type toy. We got this at a garage sale. I actually got it in a big box of cameras, like vintage cameras. So I assume the guy was like a camera collector, and we got his box of camera collecting stuff, and he had, you know, thrown this little camera toy in there. So I decided to list it because our cost was very low. It was just 22 cents per item on that box. And this ultimately sold for $7.18. So I'll take it. Next up was one of the Build-A-Bear workshop outfits that we got from that big box of Build-A-Bear items. This was a gardening apron set. We had paid $1 for it, and it sold for $14.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was a Car brand brushed gold wood easelback mini picture frame. This was gifted to us to sell, so we didn't have any cost, and it sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was another item that we got in that recent storage unit. This was a Nintendo DS game. It was just the cartridge only, and it was for the game Cake Mania 3. We paid $1.16 for each of the items from that unit, and this item sold for $12.99, and it did sell fast. Next up was a 2-pack by the brand Best Brands of Star Wars Mandalorian kid size bandanas, and they were new in the package. My husband had found a big bulk purchase or lot of a bunch of these at a garage sale, and he had purchased all of them. We paid 25 cents for each of them, and these sold for $10.19. They actually have not been selling well, so we did decide to knock down the price significantly this year to hopefully get them to move. Next up was a 6-pack of Hallmark Rejoice Christian Easter cards, and they were new in the package. We got these at a garage sale, and I have the cost at $0, so I'm not sure what's up with that. I might have like misplaced them after I had already like put the cost down on my spreadsheet. And then just added them in later. I don't know. I don't know why my cost says $0, but that's what it says, and that's how we calculated it. So that's what I'm telling you. But these sold for $7.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was a set of 2 Bose Cube Lifestyle Cubes. I have cube twice in the title. What a waste. Hate it when I see mistakes like that. Black surround speakers. We got these at a church rummage sale for $3.25, and these sold for $60 even. And these actually, this is the second time these have sold, so it did affect our profit somewhat. But the weird thing is that the first time we sold them, they came back. We got a return opened, and the buyer said like just didn't need anymore, and they came back and like it was obvious that they had not even opened the box from us. And then like when we opened the package to like make sure they were still in good condition, like we had wrapped them up with kind of like the cling wrap kind of plastic wrap stuff, and it was obvious they hadn't touched any of that. So that was kind of weird that they had ordered those and then not even touched them and just sent them back without even opening the box. But you know, at least we knew they were in good condition. So we did resell those quickly after we got them back, and this time the buyer seemed happy. Next up was a lot of 7 Wallace brand stainless Westbrook style modern hollow pistol handle steak knives. We got this at a rummage sale for $2, and these sold for $22.49. Next up was a first edition hardcover copy of Misery by Stephen King. We got this at a thrift store for $3.24, and this sold for $24.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was another item from that recent storage unit. This was a Revell Trucks 65 Chevy Stepside pickup model kit set, and it was an open box, but it had been unused. We paid $1.16 for this, and it sold for $20 even on best offer. And at this point, I'm going to stop and go ahead and do the drawing for the winner of the eBay branded light box. So let me grab my computer and we'll see who won. Okay, next up was another item from the storage unit that we just purchased. This was a Netgear N150 wireless Wi-Fi adapter. We paid $1.16 for this item, and it sold for $14.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was another item we got out of that storage unit. This was a vintage International Silver Company silverware storage chest box. We paid $1.16 for this item, and it sold on offer to buyer for $31.98. Next up was an item that we've sold previously. It was returned to us and we sold again. This was a Lakeland Sportswear men's beige suede fleece-lined rancher coat. It had a Union tag in it. We had gotten this at a garage sale for $5, and it sold the second time for $63.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was a Hasbro Cranium Disney Family Edition board game. It was missing the modeling clay that was in it, but you could like replace that with Play-Doh or just another package of modeling clay. So we did decide to go ahead and list this. We had gotten this quite a long time ago at a garage sale for $1. And it did ultimately sell for $22.38, which is good because this was probably destined for the garage sale pile this year. Next up was a lot of 8 McDonald's 1996 Happy Meal toys. These were Walt Disney's masterpiece figurines. We got all of these at a garage sale for $2.40. We bought this on like a bulk buy from this garage sale. These sold as a lot for $25 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage Bell and Howell 8mm Super 8 film projector. It worked, but the bulb wasn't working. It needed a new bulb. We got this at a garage sale for $10 and it sold very quickly for $99.99. Next up was a women's, the brand was Dressfo. It was like a like an Amazon type brand. This was a new with tags roll sleeve tunic style top. We got this on a bulk buy from Facebook Marketplace where it was really misrepresented. And not only that, when I got the box, I had to pay the postage overage on it. And so I had complained to Facebook Marketplace and I ended up getting the entire purchase for free because of that. So I ended up having no cost on this box, but I've been sitting on this item for like 4 years. It was just not a good buy altogether, even though I didn't end up having to actually buy it because we're going to end up losing money on this one. So we paid nothing for it. It sold for $15.98 and the buyer actually opened a return on it and is supposed to be sending it back. So boo. All right, next up was a 1997 play-by-play 7-inch football Fanimals Dallas Cowboys plush bear. He did have like a little stain on the back of his jersey, even though he was new with tags, So we did disclose that right in the title here, you'll see. And we got that at the Goodwill bins for 67 cents, and he sold for $15.99. Next up was a Green Zone DVD, and it was new and sealed. We got this in the Goodwill bins for 81 cents, and it sold for $8.99. Next up was a Trivial Pursuit DVD. These were just the replacement pieces only from the Saturday Night Live version of the game. We found these in the Goodwill bins for $1.18, and they sold for $9. Next up was a lot of Ziploc Zip and Steam cooking bags. It was an open box, but of course these were unused. These are discontinued items, so if you ever see these, whether they're opened or unopened at like a garage sale or estate sale, pick these up because they sell. These were actually mine. I just didn't use them anymore, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to sell these. So I had no cost. And I mean, at one time we had a cost, but I don't remember what it was. And these sold for $26.99. Next up was a Navy New International Version Trimline Bible from 1984. We got that at a thrift store for $1.08, and it sold for $29.99. Next up was another item that we got from the recent storage unit purchase that we made. This was by the brand Paradise Kids, and it was a saddle and bridle for the our generation size 18-inch American Girl doll size horse. And we got that for $1.16, and it sold very quickly for $21.18 on offer to buyer. Next up was a women's pair of over-the-knee boots by the brand Chinese Laundry. They were embroidered. They were originally retailed for $140. We got these out of the Goodwill bins for $1.33. These took forever to sell, but eventually sold for $33.99. Next up was an Oneida stainless steel Ridgecrest dinner fork. It was new in the package. We found this in a bag of flatware that we got at the thrift store. We paid 29 cents for it, and it sold for $16 even. Next up was a set of 2 Pottery Barn embroidered Suzani pillow shams. We found these at the thrift store for $3.24, and they sold for $63.98, and we did those with local pickup, so we did not have to pay shipping, so that was awesome because we had free shipping on those. Next up was a lot of 4 Jazzwares Flippy action figures. We got those at a garage sale for 75 cents, and they sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer. Next up were 2 of my husband's collectible cards. These were 1993 Donruss Baseball Series 2 cards. We had no cost on these, and they sold for $4.58. Next up were two of the Tannerite stickers that we found in the Goodwill bins. We had paid $1.34 for these, and they sold for $15.18. Next up was the very last of the turntables from the palette. So, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how happy I am to have sold that. This was an Ion USB turntable, and this one was new open box. We got that from the B-Stock liquidation palette, where we had paid $47.18 for each of the items. That was such a bad buy. This one sold for $74.38, so technically we lost money on this item, although we barely eked out a profit on this palette buy as a whole. So, you know, if you're looking at it as a whole, we made money on the palette, but I don't recommend a Costco palette from B-Stock by any means. Next up was a hand-carved wooden large 14-inch folding cookbook Bible book stand. We got this at a garage sale for $2 and it sold for $23.25. Next up was a pair of Levi's women's bootcut dark wash red tab blue jeans. We got these at a rummage sale for 42 cents. It was a fill-a-bag sale. These sold for $19.99. Next up was a vintage Marmot goose down insulated mummy style sleeping bag. We got this at an estate sale for just $5 and it sold for $117.48. It was like $97.48 plus $20 shipping. Next up was a 2002 Ghislaine Thomas the Tank Engine toy, electronic toy, and it worked. We got this at a garage sale for $1 and it sold for $12 even. Next up was an Admiral VCR. We tested it and it worked, but it did not have a remote control. We found this in the most recent storage unit that we purchased for $1.16, and this VCR sold for $49.99. Next up was 3 Bowman football cards that belonged to my husband. These sold for $6.30. And last up was a 1993 Leaf Triple Play Nicknames collectible card that was also my husband's. This one sold for $2.29. And that wraps up our video for the week of December 31st through January 6th. Now let's go over all of the totals. This week we sold 46 items for an average sale price of $28.85. Our sales totaled $1,326.93 for a net profit of $695.27. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please let us know by hitting the like button. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button with the notification bell on so you can be kept informed of all of our future content, including our video coming up very soon that will go over our recent storage unit purchase, everything we found in that unit, like the stuff that was featured in this video, and more. All right, guys, we will catch you on the flip side.